Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our good old boys from Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south, in the land of the free and the home of the brave, on a beautiful August the 27th, 2020. Rondo Deportes, bonjour. Big C will be calling in after the Big C pause. I do want to say, all around the world, just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away, and I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity Comcast TV. You can follow Big C Sports on Amazon Fire TV and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, I love doing the Big C pause. I even heard Bob Costa say we all need to pause. Bob Costa saying we got to pause. We all got to pause, Bob Costas, but we'll never pause on our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help. I'm telling you, if you know anyone going through issues, just pick up the phone, make the call. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255 and get them some help. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can hopefully get some people some help that they desperately need and just make the call. I do want to tell people, very happy to be affiliated. We're actually opening up in another market as we're expanding Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, Direct TV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants. And they say, hey, kid, when you reach out to them, just tell them Big C sent you. The goal is simple. We want to recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers to join our team all over this great country. Just like McDonald's does it, car dealerships do it, sports teams do it too, until they got on the pause. You can see sports on TV, and they're going to get back in the saddle. Watch TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. For those of you looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com, and you can get some help. Really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. We want to be bold. We really want to be the new sexy. We want to be bold. We want to be clever. We want to be thrilling. We want to be funny. We want to be thoughtful. But most of all, we want to be provocative. If you're doing something and it feels good and you want some more, just Google it. A lot of people have Googled Big C Sports and copied it. I want to make sure that Americans get out and register to vote. Text the word vote to 26797. That's 26797. Register. Tell all your friends to do it. Tell them Big C and the NFL said do it too. I want to get on something because I know there's been a lot going on in the sports world. In fact, there's been a lot going on in the sports universe, and I really appreciate being a part of it. And before I finish out our call, before I add Big C on after the Big C pause, I want to ask, as NBA basketball is saying they're going to resume again, and we're really trying to sincerely find a way to make life better for everyone, to experience liberty and justice for all. But I want to put out a call, just like Bob Costa said that we need to do the pause on CNN. Only Big C Sports speaks that way. But people will listen in, and they'll copy your style. But I want to ask in all sincerity, will our white brethren, guys like Al Michaels, guys like Jim Nantz, guys like Bob Costas with the pause, guys like Vin Scully, how about Joe Buck, can they share their sincere thoughts on helping create discussions on ending systemic racism that affects black Americans? Think about it. They make a living covering black men, and they oftentimes are paid tens of millions of dollars every year because they cover NFL football. Al Michaels has been doing it for years. They cover College football, Jim Nantz been doing that for years, as well as NFL football. I mean, Buck, he's been a part of Major League Baseball for years. Vin Scully, I think one of the best broadcasters in the history of the universe. He's seen a lot of people down at Chavez Ravine. And I always go back to the fact that I got my start in broadcasts, I think with the help of, it was a white man, Tom Kelly, former Tom Kelly, the late Tom Kelly. He was a USC broadcaster. And I spotted a game for him in Southern California, got a call from Fox Sports, John Madden, Pat Summerall's crew. I'm not saying our style is the same style that they have. But I will tell you this. They are on the inside of an industry that has been very exclusive, that has been based on who you know. Oftentimes, they have been privy to conversations that I will never be privy to. But I would love to ask for decent people. If you're just a dumb bigot, who cares? I don't even want you to listen to me. But I'm asking for smart people, well-read people, people who are not intellectually vapid, people that when they hear someone talk about someone that's hurting, whether it's racism or sexism or abuse that's gone on, whatever, when we try to reach out and help people, it starts with conversation. And there are many dumb people, guys like Mike Ditka. I don't care what Mike Ditka thinks when they say, go get the hell out of the country, when Colin Kaepernick says, look, we're hurting, can you help? And they made it about a flag as opposed to about human decency and humanity. So I would love to just hear, and I believe we will start hearing this by September. We're going to hear more from guys like Al Michaels, guys like Jim Nantz, guys like Bob Costas, who's also been around for many, many years. You know, Vin Scully's no longer broadcasting games, but there's a lot of people who learned from the great Vin Scully. Guys like Joe Buck, I mean, they're doing games all the time. Not that they have to, but black Americans in sports and in politics, we've always advocated, at least the Big C Sports Show has, I'm not going to say other people have, on every show we advocate for the end to domestic violence against women, and it can go both ways, but we're not asking women to solve that problem. We're asking men to solve that problem, not leave it on the shoulders of women. And I would love to see, what do our white brethren think? I mean, the Christian field, even if you're atheist or agnostic, do you see anything wrong that's going on in our society that maybe you and your wisdom and your connections as white men, you've been allowed inside of a circle, maybe you can share that and it can help everybody work to form a more perfect union. Oftentimes you find that black men that are ones out there, like the NBA players, they agree to finish playing in the playoffs, in the bubble. They're going to stay focused on what happens in the United States of America. We need lawmakers to sign legislation and address liberty and justice for all. I'm going to mention something that just happened, and it's a monumental moment, and I've been predicting it would happen. There's going to be a new president in the United States, November 3rd. Donald Trump's going to be voted out of office. I've been saying that for a long time because so many things have happened that have led to that belief. Even Donald Trump knows it. Would you believe today, Vice President Mike Pence, he was disinvited from a Wisconsin college to do their commencement speech. It's called Wisconsin Lutheran College. And they disinvited the Trump-Pence rhetoric that's filled with racism, racial animus, scaring suburban white women, saying that some black people are going to move into your neighborhood. He even named Cory Booker. And they did that. But I was telling Big C, oftentimes you'll say the white people are the problem. I say good and bad people. It has nothing to do with color. I don't want to say nothing. I do want to say it's about the decency of people. But you just had this Lutheran college that listened to that dog whistle Republican National Convention, and they're trying to associate themselves with God. Trying to associate themselves with God. It wasn't God that said grab them by the vagina in his locker room behavior. It wasn't God that has most of his friends being arrested for breaking the law. That's Trump. And Pence says nothing about it. It wasn't God that allowed almost 180,000 Americans to die with COVID-19. And you have a president that said, it'll just go away. It'll just wash away. He lied. It is not about what I think. This is young white people and people that run that college that said they do not want nothing to do with him. they renounced him. It wasn't God that had the National Guard called on white civilians and black when they simply went to Washington, D.C., and they wanted to talk about protesting. Donald Trump called out the law enforcement. They shot white kids with rubber bullets and tear gas and roughed them up. A white man did that. The guy that's going to be replaced November 3rd. But decent people still have to vote. So what does this mean? And this is for you, even Republicans, the decent ones are leaving him because they realize, don't keep throwing God up there as you've been so wicked in the White House. As Americans keep dying, and you're telling the CDC to don't test people if they come in contact with somebody. Those are white people coming in contact dying also. When you have this mounting pandemic and people just want to watch sports, it's taking black men to bring attention to this. You got to let your voice be heard on November 3rd. They said nothing about the shooting that happened in Wisconsin, where a white man walks down the street with a shotgun or machine gun, whatever it was, shoots 3 people, murders 2, and Pence and Trump said nothing. Trump's going to try to say a few things tonight, but they really tacitly consent with it. That's why they haven't said anything. They said nothing. Vice President Mike Pence no longer invited to deliver a commencement address to the graduates of Wisconsin Lutheran College amid ongoing unrest in Kenosha, Wisconsin, after Jacob Blake was shot in the back 7 times. 7 like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Did Donald Trump or Mike Pence say anything about it? No, they keep talking about burning buildings. Not a guy that was shot. If a white man was shot 7 times in the back with his children watching, you don't think they would have said something about it? And then you have a knucklehead like Rudy Giuliani saying that Coach Doc Rivers is race baiting. Coach Doc Rivers' father was in the police department. Giuliani, he's done nothing but have his stop and frisk ruled unconstitutional. And now decent white people are turning against that rhetoric. Makes my heart happy. A college said, Mike Pence, you're not welcome. Just like Donald Trump told the suburban white women, the housewives, don't allow black people into your neighborhoods because it's going to drive down your property values of all that garbage. They're going to want to miscegenate with the children. White Americans have rebuked Mike Pence and Donald Trump. This is just the first step of it. I know you want to watch sports. I know you want to know who won the game. But this is important. After further review, with careful consideration, the same way they're asking when you go to the polls, of the escalating events in Kenosha, Wisconsin, this is under the Donald Trump administration. Even for those of you who vote for him, if your own child was shot 7 times and president says nothing, and then he has the audacity to ask you to let him do it 4 more years. I want 4 more years. 4 more years of what? They didn't give Jeffrey Epstein 4 more years. What happened to Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump's best friend? But people who read, they know that. That's why the dumb guys that just want to hear about sports, I couldn't care less what they think. So after further review, the Board of Regents, the college's administration, they have jointly decided to present a different speaker instead of the rhetoric that comes out of Mike Pence and Donald Trump. It's going to be Saturday, August 29th, 2020. The college said in a statement today, Mike Pence will no longer be invited. You know that means he's not welcome, and he won't be welcome to sit as a vice president in the White House after November 3rd. Because I've been telling Big C, decent people will decide if they like the rhetoric and the division that's coming out of that party. You don't have to like everything about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, but they're decent people. Are they perfect? No. But they're a whole lot better than what we have right now. That racist division that we've seen, that is really, in my mind, has no place in American society. So they're starting to distance themselves, and I really appreciate that. So what is this about players deciding that they're going to come back and play? Number one, I'm so proud of our African American men. We've had colleges and pro teams from soccer, baseball, basketball that have decided that they're not going to participate in playing right now. They wanted to take some time to take the pause, taking the pause and figure things out. But another reason that I feel that Pence was uninvited from participating is because of what Giuliani said. Giuliani's a crook, and he cheats on his wife. He's a bad person. His stop and frisk was ruled unconstitutional. He ripped Doc Rivers, who's one of the most decent men in the universe, respected men. But here's a guy, Rudy Giuliani, that was pro stop and frisk, says that Doc Rivers is misleading black people against cops. As if we don't know what the Kerner Commission wrote over 50 years ago. I'm sure Giuliani's never even read the Kerner Commission. Maybe he should now. Claiming that his emotional speech about Jacob Blake was loaded with a bunch of racist BS. No, Giuliani's BS. So was his stop and frisk ruled unconstitutional. And he said it was a con perpetuated by Democrats. I'm going to tell you what was perpetuated by Giuliani. 7 gunshots in front of someone's kids. If that had happened in front of Giuliani and his kids to Giuliani, would he still call it rhetoric? He wouldn't. But I've always said you can't worry about stupid people that are going to tell you to shut up, because just like black men, you got to be bold. You got to be the vanguard at times. And not everybody is going to be with you. Not everybody likes what we do. I just say Google and see if we're right. Google and see if we're wrong. Don't wait for people who are afraid to say what we need to do. That's up to each individual. I mean, I love the fact, are they going to play sports? Whether they do it or not, that's their choice. But they've decided that they want to play sports. They want to get the NBA back. They've had a meeting today. And when they're going to start, I guess that's still up to debate. Most likely by the weekend, etc. To resume playoff games. And I know everybody has their own thoughts about why or why not. But one thing I do love, and I ask my white brethren, the decent ones, and I open the show asking my white brethren broadcasters that I've listened to for many, many moons, whether it's a Jim Nantz or Bob Costas or Joe Buck, many of them, Ben Scully, so many people who've had the eyes and ears of Americans following sports. At some point in time, you gotta look at people and say, what can we do as a country to make things better for everybody? I've always believed that we are a country of the law. Of course we are. But I know it's decent people that make this country great. Black Americans fought in every war, and we still love this country. We're just asking for help. When a woman says, I'm being battered, I'm being abused, will you help me? No one says, oh, you just hate America. No one says to a woman who is battered and abused, oh, you just hate America? How did Melania Trump give a speech on Be Best? She did a decent job, but she never denounced the birtherism that she was a part of toward Michelle Obama, First Lady Michelle Obama, and President Barack Obama. She never denounced that. You don't think this college in Wisconsin recognizes that, what those people are doing? And Donald Trump's son calls protesters animals, yet they said nothing about those white men that killed people in Wisconsin. They said nothing. They said nothing. Nothing at all. It's bigger than just sports. I love this country. I love my family. I would not sit back and quietly hope that things will just get better. We got to make it better. It's about decent people making it better. And if we can't do it together, then it's going to be harder. I appreciate the WNBA, African American women for the most part, and the white ladies that are part of it too. Black and white women. They're not saying the other person's the enemy. They're just trying to help each other. They come together. They pull together. They embrace each other. They pray together. And they do whatever they got to do to make the country better. And I'm going to be a part of that as much as I can with Big C Sports. We'll take the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout, and we'll be back in just a moment. All right, we're back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. Really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. Before I even get into the sports, we got Big C on the line. I want to just say thoughts and prayers with everybody in the Louisiana area and also East Texas, the Lake Charles area. I know they're dealing with the Hurricane Laura that came through there, and not everybody heeded the warnings to get out. But all I can offer is thoughts and prayers. Big C, you have anything to offer on that? You're down in the South. I just want to know what your thoughts are about what people can do as they'll start looking at recovery coming up in the next couple of days. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, they had to go through recovery several years ago when a huge hurricane came through. And those people who do not heed the warnings of the National Weather Service, Charlton, it's hard to feel completely empathetic towards them because they're saying, just like COVID-19, it's not real.
Yeah, they say sometimes, but some people can't get away. They don't have the money to even eat, let alone get in transportation and get away.
But the city was providing transportation out of town, Charlton. They brought in buses to get people out of town. They were lifting the COVID-19 restrictions as far as social distancing. So the city and the state was providing assistance for people to leave. It's those who chose not to leave voluntarily.
Yeah, and as we know, Big C, that sometimes it's called fight or flight. People panic. People panic in different situations, and I feel thoughts and prayers go out to the people that maybe couldn't think right. I know a lot of people, that's why we give it the crisis hotline. Not everybody's a lucid thinker. They panic through fight or flight. Still hope that everyone can make the best of it as much as possible. I want to touch on something that happened, as there's so much that's happened in the country. I know NBA basketball, after taking the pause, they decided that they're going to go back and play. And I don't know the whole outcome of it. I think they're still going to pause on today and maybe even Friday and maybe resume play by the weekend. Do you know anything more about the players and the decision going forward, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, not really. I haven't had access to the bubble. This is the decision that these players are going to make, and they're going to make a conscious decision about how it will affect them and society moving forward. But I think the biggest move of these players were initially putting all the games on pause, letting people know that they have power, letting owners know that they have power, and that they're upset and they're uneasy about how things are going with race relations in the United States. What I like about what happened, Charlton, in the games, being put on pause is that it shows that these players think beyond just the game.
Yeah.
And that society depends so much on these players. And as I've been talking for weeks, they have more clout than they have ever had in their life or ever will.
Yeah.
But it shows the unity of professional athletes because not only did the NBA not play last night, MLS soccer did not play. The WNBA did not play. Several Major League Baseballs were canceled. So when you see the unification in these professional athletes, that really speaks volume in America.
Yeah, I even in San Francisco, here in the Bay Area, the Giants decided that they were going to put their game on pause, and the Oakland A's, decided not to. But they can all make their own choice as to why they do or don't. I just believe at the end of the day, I think it was Kushner, he made fun of Black Lives Matter by saying they can have all the slogans they want. But at the end of the day, then that's what I've been saying. We even did a show on that yesterday. Slogans are great. It's a start, but legislation has to happen. And for people that say sports and politics don't mix, even the White House, Jared Kushner, how did he get his job? He must know somebody. But he's even commenting on the Black Lives Matter and NBA basketball. And he's going to be out of office, too, as November 3rd, as people do what they did to Mike Pence to say, get out. That's what the college told Mike Pence in Wisconsin. But when you feel that it's going to take the law, it's going to take change in law, whether it's owners, whether it's players. No owner or player has ever gone into the state capital of any state and signed legislation in the law. That takes lawmakers. If they get a call from a sports team owner, usually it's, can you help us raise money to get a new stadium built? But whatever it takes, the more the merrier, Big C. Your thoughts?
But that shows the power of the owners of these professional teams, Charlton, when they can use legislation to get arenas and stadiums built for their team, and they don't have to put in all the money. It shows the power that they have within the political branch. It's not lawyers, Charlton, it's lawmakers. It's the senators of the United States. As I've been advocating with you for weeks and weeks about, is that they're the ones who make the decision on laws being changed. And as long as we keep those old white men sitting there in the Senate, they're not going to change laws because they grew up in racism and segregation And that's the way that they feel things should be. They have that George Wallace mentality. So when you think about that they're in there for all the American people, no, they're not, Charlton. That's just a campaign slogan, that I'm here to serve everybody. No, I'm here to serve the people who look like me and who I feel I should protect from other minorities in America. As we think about America, Charlton, we're the only society that identifies with Negroes. When you think about around the world, and other societies do not identify black people as Negroes, they identify them as people as being part of their country. They call them wherever they were born. If that's where they were born, then that's what they are identified as. We are the only society that has separation of the cultures.
Well, I want to ask you about the college that disinvited Mike Pence, which is a precursor of what's going to happen for the elections, Big C. They said you're not welcome. They don't want his racist demagoguery, his dialogue, his vitriol, and pretending that he's a man of God. He's not a man of God. If God is doing what the Pence and Trump administration has done, I don't want to be a part of it. They let 180,000 people die because they said it was not real. And they say there's no racism in the United States of America. So I guess the Kerner report was wrong. But to have a college, a Lutheran college, say, we don't want you around anymore. Big C, you can't get more white than Lutheran in Wisconsin, and they're saying we don't want you around. Your thoughts?
Well, you have to understand the reason why Mike Pence was put on the ticket 4 years ago, Charlton, was to get the evangelical vote. It wasn't because of his knowledge and his ability, because if you look at his stance as a vice president, he's done nothing but shine Donald Trump's shoes ever since he's been there in that position. So when you have these evangelicals sitting around looking at what the White House has stood for, not standing for people of America, but standing for themselves and their own agenda, Charlton, this is not an unexpected stance.
Yeah, it makes my heart emboldened that things we talk about come true. Let me ask you this question, because I juxtapose what this college, men of faith, I've been saying, in order to end racism, even Pope Francis said we got to denounce racism all over this world. And the Vatican has their own problems. But that's something he had no equivocation denouncing racism that Mike Pence and Donald Trump says does not exist. Okay? The Christian community hears that. So Milwaukee, Wisconsin, would you believe they have the highest rate of black male incarceration per capita in the United States, but they're denouncing white bigotry? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is why we've seen the stance from the Milwaukee Bucks refusing to take the court. When you think about their guard, Jaylen Brown, who last January was beat up and roughed up by the police outside a CVS store going in to get some cough syrup at 2:30 in the morning because he was a black man, because he double parked. There's nobody in the parking lot at 2 o'clock in the morning. Instead of giving him a warning or a citation, they decided they needed to tase him and beat him up, cuff him up, and take him to jail because he was a black man. He was an intimidating figure because he was a tall black man, so they felt that their lives were being threatened by him saying, I'm sorry for what I did. But they also have the ability and the autonomy to do that. And until we get rid of police immunity, Charlton, against the mistreatment of black people or any people in America, these things will never stop.
And like I asked my decent law enforcement, so I know some friends in law enforcement, from sheriffs to officers, do you want to get rid of police officers too? I mean, that would make life better for you too. You would think so. Let me get your thoughts on this. Again, it might just be your opinion, but everybody has opinions. I look at former NBA star and current TNT studio host, co-host, Kenny the Jet Smith, along with so many people just being real, not pretending that everything's fine, like almost every black American that Trump has speak at his convention. They want to talk about Abraham Lincoln being a Republican and he freed slaves. Abraham Lincoln did not call for stop and frisk in the United States. Of course, he helped end slavery. But they keep acting like they're the same Republican Party. They're not. They're a lot different. So when Kenny the Jet Smith walked off the set last night, after siding with the players' stance on unity and not playing until they get answers from the NBA, we can't even get the White House to look at it. They just say nothing's happened, nothing's wrong, because they're not being shot down or have a knee on their neck, Big C. Give me your thoughts on Kenny the Jet Smith. I'm proud of black men not just sitting there like they're puppets and making a stance, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I appreciate what Kenny the Jet Smith did last night, being a former professional athlete, Charles, and taking that emotional stance that he did last night. You could see that it touched him to the core. He wasn't just walking off. to making a statement. It was being real, is that he could not stand by and advocate for what black men are going through because he's witnessed that in his lifetime, Charlton, growing up in the South, in North Carolina. You're going to deal with that, and that's what Kenny Smith has dealt with throughout his life. He's had family members that had to deal with that, being from North Carolina. So I appreciate what he did as far as his stance for walking off the stage, not trying to find an excuse for the players, not trying to explain the players' position, but leaving it up to the players to explain to America why they did what they did in the time frame that they did. It's not up for broadcasters to explain what players are going through.
Yeah, but it's like a gumbo. We could all be a part of the spices in a gumbo. I want to juxtapose.
But think about it, Charlton. If they had a listen 4 years ago, every broadcaster and every player, Colin Kaepernick gave you a prelude to what's going on now. 4 years later, you think about how many loss of life have occurred in that 4 years from police interactions with black men in America. You think about how many families have been destroyed in America from police interaction in the past 4 years since Colin Kaepernick gave you that warning of his foresight. This is what we need to stop in America. So all the actions of athletes, broadcasters, politicians, anybody in America, they should talk about Colin Kaepernick as much as they talk about anything else that's occurring in society today. Colin Kaepernick created this situation because some butthole NFL owners saying, we're more concerned about our bottom line and what white people think than what happens to black Americans. Think about that. That's what the NFL owners said when they banned Colin Kaepernick from playing in the NFL. We think more about our bottom line and what our white viewers think than what happened to black lives in America. That's what all owners said in unison 4 years ago.
Yeah, but people can grow. And that's what the growth.
Have they grown? They haven't grown, Charlton. Which NFL owner has stood up and said Colin Kaepernick was right? If we had listened to Colin Kaepernick 4 years ago, maybe we would not be in this racial strife in America. Even Roger Goodell has spoke up and said, well, maybe we were wrong for not listening to Colin Kaepernick 4 years ago. But think about it. He said maybe. He didn't say we were wrong. He said maybe we were wrong. But he's just a spokesperson. The owners haven't come out and said that. So the owners have not grown, Charlton, because they have not taken a stance on the side of the black players in the NFL on this upcoming season because they're forcing them to go out and play in COVID-19. So tell me where they've grown when they're putting black lives on the line.
Big C, I think you got to open your parachute and quit focusing on people. They already told you they don't like you. You keep begging them to open their mouths. Listen to this for a second, and you tell me how you can even disagree with this. I just told you, people can change. The state of Wisconsin, they have a college called Wisconsin Lutheran College. They had invited Mike Pence to speak to young white graduates about how to go forward in America. They did a turnaround in 24 to 48 hours. Okay? You got to give people a chance because this is a very conservative area. But these white Christians, they see rhetoric, they see hatred, just like Pope Francis told people. We got to end racism. They have denounced Mike Pence. You can't keep going back to 4 years ago. This just happened in the last 48 hours, and you're going to see more of it happen. And as more people see the Christian world get involved with denouncing racism, you can't keep asking some racist NFL owner to do anything. It's always about the vote, Big C. Your thoughts?
When did you first hear about Wisconsin Lutheran College? How long have you known about this institution?
Today.
You just found out about this today because somebody told you about it.
No, it's all over the news.
On the radar. It's not like Notre Dame told him not to show
no,
up.
No, you're missing the point.
About the commencement speeches that he has given over the last 3 years since he's been vice president. You think that just, today Mike Pence became racist? You think just yesterday Mike Pence became racist? This rhetoric has come from the administration, Charlton, ever since they've been elected. So I understand change comes. But Colin Kaepernick took a stance 4 years ago. Tommy Smith and Lee Evans took a stance 52 years ago. So when we want to talk about 48 years between change and you learned about something 4 hours ago, it doesn't resonate.
It has to resonate. You got to open your mind because that same college that's preparing young minds, mostly white, that's a white institution. They could have said, we don't care. Nothing's going on. We don't want to change. But if you don't have the ability to see change happening right in front of your eyes, then it doesn't matter what you say. Because you're asking people to change. Hold on a second.
This is a college that's right down the state with the largest disproportion of incarceration of black men in America. I haven't seen anything where this college has stepped up to say why you're incarcerating black men in such a horrific rate in our state. You're talking about Christian values. They haven't stood up for those black men that are incarcerated.
You don't know.
Tried to find out why they're incarcerated.
Big C, you do not know that.
They have voted for the laws that keep those black men incarcerated in Wisconsin. They make a stance on Pence. Wow. Let's applaud. Let's go all sing Kumbaya. But start advocating for those black men that are disproportionately incarcerated in Wisconsin. Think about it. Former NBA player Caron Butler was in that same system when he was in high school. He was incarcerated, but once he got out and was able to go to school, Charlton, he's constantly gone back and tried to help those men. But let me see those people from that Lutheran college try to go help those incarcerated men, then I'll sing their praise.
You don't have to know everything they're doing, just like they don't know everything you're doing. But if you're so blind that you cannot see change happening right in front of your eyes, then it just doesn't make any sense. If you don't see it, then why would they give a darn if you don't even acknowledge that? It's amazing how sometimes we also as people, you got to be willing to grow. That means you're going to know more tomorrow than you knew yesterday. You got to give that same leverage to people that you think are against you, because that's a big statement when a state is in a Christian university is going to denounce these fake Christians that are in the White House. That's never happened before, not even in the days of Governor Wallace. I think that's tremendous change. But again, you have a right to your own opinion. I do see that's tremendous change. I want to ask you a thought on this, because for anyone to sit back and say, yeah, but for 400 years they haven't changed, people can change on a daily basis. There are more American citizens in prison today serving life sentences than Americans incarcerated in 1970s. And once you identify people as less than human, you can justify anything. The Constitution stated that Negroes are less than human, but would you believe, just like the University of Wisconsin, Lutheran University, Big C, people can change. And oftentimes, you can't assume that people know everything until the light is shined on them, until they're educated. Just like we try to educate ourselves and educate others, you can't keep blaming people for not knowing 10 years ago or 50 years ago or even a week ago what they know today. Big C, your thoughts?
So, Charlton, how long have our politicians understood the Constitution or say they stand behind the Constitution constantly? They're constantly talking about the First and Second Amendment rights. So you're telling me that they're not aware that in the Constitution that it states that Negroes are 3/5 of a human being, and they have not, over 225 years of the Constitution, have not fought to change that, Charlton. They fight for everything else, but they don't fight to change what a Negro is identified as in the Constitution. When you're always talking about change, laws, courts, these white people that control the Senate, Charlton, have never fought to change that. In 225 years, you got to change something in the Constitution. You want to put an amendment in or whatever, you need to go back and say that Negroes are 100% human beings. Because until they're identified as 100% human beings, they will never be treated as equals in America. You can justify anything, just like you said that there's more people incarcerated for life sentences today than there were people incarcerated in 1970 in America. How many of those people, what percentage have been Negroes, Charlton, that's been incarcerated for frivolous things? We talked about the pig laws in the South a few weeks ago. How easy it is to trump up charges on a black person under these pig laws and give them unprecedented sentence. We talked about one man that tried to steal a pair of hedge scissors in Louisiana, and he's got a life sentence for trying to steal a pair of hedge scissors. A misdemeanor got him a life sentence. So you can justify anything when you don't think about Negroes as being 100% human.
Well, I would say the college, Wisconsin Lutheran College, disagrees with you because they're changing. You just don't see it, though.
Can they change laws? Can they walk into the Senate, sign a bill that changes the law, Charlton? That's what we talk about. We think about Christianity, and I'm not against it, and I'm not talking against religion. But as we talk, you talked about those owners not being able to go in and sign a bill that changes the law in America. Let me know when a college can do that because they say they don't want to see Mike Pence.
You don't think colleges and universities that are run by white men are setting an example that their white politicians will listen to? I guarantee you this. They will listen to the universities and those deans. If the sports owners want to be a part of it too, but you're waiting a long time for that. But I'm just telling you, it's my opinion.
That's like Jerry Falwell and his wife coming on television last week and allegedly having an affair with another man. They're having these three-ways all the time. And I didn't hear the White House announce that, but yet he was on the thing to speak at the Republican National Convention until he pulled himself out. And yet he speaks at invocations at the White House. I don't hear the White House denouncing that type of white Christianity.
Well, the White House does that. That's why they were denounced by this Lutheran University, Big C. You got to be able to see it, though. If not, then you'll just have the same argument. But again, everybody has a right to their own opinion. I think change is coming when the clergy and the lawmakers get involved. And if the coaches and sports teams want to help with athletes, that's fine, too. Let me get your thoughts on something that I already touched on. We have a guy in Rudy Giuliani who also messes around on his wife. I think she was even sick, and he was out there buying women. And he had a stop and frisk ruled unconstitutional. You know, things change in the law when you get the law involved. Now, he said that Doc Rivers was misleading and that black cops, or I guess black people and cops have an issue. I guess he's never understood the Kerner Commission, and he even understood his own law was ruled unconstitutional, stop and frisk. What is his dog whistle about trying to shout down Doc Rivers for asking decent people like Lutheran University, Wisconsin, to make a change? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, he said Doc Rivers was disingenuous about his press conference when he was talking about the injustice that's going on in America, and why can't he just be a coach and instead of have the answer to all these issues? Rudy Giuliani, through his dog whistle, just said racism didn't exist, and that Doc Rivers was lying to black people about police brutality in America and trying to stoke the fire. That's what Rudy Giuliani was saying. Doc Rivers grew up in a police household. His dad was a police officer for 30 years in Detroit, actually was a lieutenant.
Yeah, lieutenant.
So Doc Rivers understands what good policing is and what bad policing is. Doc Rivers played in Boston, so he knows what bad policing is. He coached in Boston, so he knows what bad policing is. Now he lives in Los Angeles, Charlton, so it still manifests itself out there. Doc Rivers has seen the total gamut of what police officers do, good and bad.
Yeah.
And when Doc Rivers speaks up about a bad police officer, he's speaking from the heart and firsthand knowledge. He's not talking from some political office, Charlton, that doesn't have to deal with that. He lived with that. He grew up with that, so he knows what a good police officer is. And so when Doc Rivers speaks, it should be like E.F. Hutton. People should listen.
Yeah.
Because this man is professional in every aspect.
Yeah, he's inclusive. The man, he knows what he's talking about, and he's a lot more decent man than Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump and Mike Pence. So, as I mentioned earlier, before you were able to get on, I was talking about our white brethren, because I really do believe, at least in my lifetime, as we deal with people who may look different and think different, we can reach common ground. I talked about Jim Nantz and Al Michaels, and Bob Costas talked about doing the pause. I wonder where he heard that. But where can we get our white brethren, even sportscasters, because sports will get the conversation going, Big C. When can we wait on those guys? I don't want to wait on nothing. They won't do anything but jump on later. But when you look at team owners in professional sports, and also include upper management, they're generally old white men. It doesn't mean they're bad, but they're generally old and white by design. And they've never really had to deal with the racial injustice toward them or their families during their lifetimes. They don't understand the plight of black men and athletes in America, except for when they're playing for them. But what they do understand is this. They understand 7 shots in the back of a man in front of his children. And Giuliani and Pence said, there's no race problem. They saw a white man walking down the street with a shotgun in that same state of Wisconsin. And he walked by police. They offered him bottled water, as well as many other white men with guns. They offered them bottled water. So what do they not get that maybe we're asking them to provide a solution for? A Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, have you ever worked and asked any of your white coworkers or white peers how they feel about racism?
Yeah.
You've asked them.
Yep.
Have they asked their white friends and their peers how they feel about racism?
I don't know.
The issue in America.
I don't know the answer. Yeah, I don't know.
If they want to sit down and have dialogue about racism in America, you have to understand racism and systemic racism are 2 different things. when you talk about those white owners and those people, those executives, they deal with systemic racism. Systemic racism is never having to answer to anybody.
Yeah.
It's not that you don't hire the most qualified person. You hire the person that you're most comfortable with.
Yeah.
That's what we get with these professional organizations hiring people and not hiring black people or people of color. That's systemic racism. It's not what we always see on the street. That's blatant racism.
Yeah.
Systemic racism is saying, well, you know, you sound different on the phone.
Yeah.
Or the position has already been filled. Or we were looking to go in another direction. That's systemic racism. When you deny people of color equal opportunity, and you do it by not being mean, you do it by being kind, that's systemic racism. We're so used to blatant racism in America that we forget what systemic racism means. And that comes from those executives who do not hire black people, who do not put them in those positions. Even though they're the most qualified, they're just uncomfortable with them. They're educated and everything, but they're uncomfortable with them because they feel a sense of intimidation that they cannot go upon with their life like they normally do because they have to be careful being around this person of color.
I've always, and people can look at this too. Sports is really creating so much great dialogue. I'm so grateful for it, Big C. There's no one answer for everybody. It takes a collusion, not a collusion. It takes a fist is better than a finger. And a fist is stronger than a finger. It takes all people to come together. And so I even asked my white brethren, like, what do they talk about behind closed doors? Just the honest ones, because the liars won't say anything. They'll be like Pence and Trump, thinking if they throw some money at you that you're going to be okay. But let me get your feeling on it. And the thing with you and I, you're from the South. I'm out here in the West Coast. Are things more liberal out here? I don't know. I've oftentimes been the only black person in media at many events that I've gone to, and that's in the 2000s, Big C. So why, and I always say it's about opportunity, not necessarily just proximity. I want to get your thoughts on why do black Americans, and what do black Americans need in America? Is it housing? Of course. Employment security, yes. Educational security, medical security, nutrition. A lot of kids go to school hungry. And for qualified immunity to be taken away from law enforcement until they start shooting white people, and everybody says they must have done something wrong, we got to have some recourse when you try to murder people. Big C, your thoughts?
Qualified immunity, Charlton. People put that at the bottom of the list. I put it at the top of the list because when police officers are no longer protected by qualified immunity, that means that you can shoot somebody and you're immune. Breonna Taylor's been dead for several months,
I know.
laying in her bed in her own house and shot and killed. Those same police officers that shot and killed Breonna Taylor 2 years earlier had done a similar event, Charlton, where they went to the wrong residence and killed people.
Yeah.
So they had qualified immunity to keep doing it. Every time you see a police officer on television, we saw it in Wisconsin, on Sunday. Those police officers are protected by qualified immunity.
Yeah.
That's what it is. As long as you have qualified immunity, you have no problem pulling the trigger on black people. Yes, we all want equality in America, Charlton. We want equality when it comes to housing. What is the president talking about? Oh, they're going to move into the suburbs and shackle and run down your property value.
Wow.
If you bring people of color into your neighborhood, your property value is nothing. You might as well move out. That's what the president is telling people. And so when we want quality housing and safe housing, that's what we want. It doesn't have to be in the suburbs. It's anywhere in America. We want equality when it comes to employment. As Mitch McConnell said, they don't need to earn a living wage, so we're not going to raise the national, minimum wage standard in America.
Yeah.
Those minorities don't need to earn a living wage. Let them work 2 or 3 jobs to survive. Let them be animals. When they were slaves, they worked all day long, sun up to sundown. They can still do it. We want health care. When we look at the disproportionate rate of death here in COVID-19 to people of color, Charlton, because they have the lowest health care availability in America. They have the lowest nutritional value availability in America. So when we want to talk about equality, that's systemic racism, Charlton, when we're looking at it. Systemic racism, when these people can't get what white people get in America, they don't have to say it, they just do it to you.
Yeah, we're having a hard time with your microphone. I don't know what happened. I know there's a lot of weather going on down south. But I really believe that our country is going through what they call a shake-up from the neck up. And we all got to do that reflection in the mirror. What did Michael Jackson? I'm looking at the man in the mirror. Wisconsin Lutheran College. I think it's gonna spread all over the country because they saw their own white children being sprayed with rubber bullets and tear gas and roughed up by law enforcement just for wanting to go out and vote. And Donald Trump's son calls them animals. But I think they're going to get the real animals out of the White House when they go to vote, just like that Lutheran College in Wisconsin of all places. If it was in L.A. or New York or Illinois or Georgia, I would understand. But in Wisconsin, you can't get much more white than Wisconsin, Big C. And they told these white bigots in the White House that your Governor Wallace Southern tactics are no longer working. I think that's going to spread, and that gives me hope. That's why I say there's good people and bad, not just based on their color. But I want to get your thoughts before we close out. Again, NBA games, they're on pause. They're talking about playing again. They are seeking simply liberty and justice for all. They want, when you have white men occupying streets with shotguns and semi-automatic weapons, and they can shoot and kill people, and they can walk up on the police, and the police offer them bottled water and say, we thank you for being here. That doesn't happen to African Americans. It just doesn't. And they have Giuliani and Pence and Trump, and I feel bad for any black American that sits on that stage with that man as he's telling you time and time again, yes, Herschel Walker included, you don't count. And I'm going to tell you many times you don't count. And they said nothing about a white guy, just like Dylan Booth shot 9 people, black Americans in their church, they gave them something to eat. These officers in Wisconsin gave white people water. They shot a black man in front of his kids. But so what can you think, can basketball coming back playing, is that the right thing right now, Big C, or would you hold out your thoughts? And I think we're still having a hard time with your phone. We're going to try to get you on the line. So, Big C, I think we got you back on the line now. I know you're all in the South dealing with a lot of weather. So with basketball, Sam, we're going to play again. We don't know what they've talked about and why, but I'm going to say my thinking for the NBA owners, because you like to bring the owners in. I don't think they mean much at all. And the commissioners and the lawmakers and the governors of these countries, of the United States, they got to change law at the White House level. We need our Congress and our Senate to legislate changes. And I think the more the merrier. That has to be the message, not just more clapping and screaming Black Lives Matter. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it's always been the message. You got to look at how President Obama technically was handcuffed for 8 years with the Senate and the House because they were all Republicans. They would not pass any bills that he put forth. And you think about all these bills that Trump has been signing. These are bills that the President Obama had laying with dust on top of them, Charlton, because Mitch McConnell would not move them through the Senate or put them on the floor.
He has to go too. Yeah.
So everything that Trump is taking credit for, this is what President Obama had already put in place. He wasn't intelligent enough to enact these laws throughout America, and that's what people need to understand more than anything.
Yeah.
But as long as we got these old white men, Charlton, they got to be voted out of office. The people who go in and vote on November 3rd and in the midterm election in 2020 have to see the plight of this country and the direction that it's going. You have to make change through voting. We can march, we can do all that, which is great because you have to create.
Yeah, it's a part of it. It's a part of it.
You have to wake people up. And with almost, when you think about it, yesterday was 4 years to the day that Colin Kaepernick took his knee for the first time. 4 years to the day, yesterday with Colin Kaepernick. And as we look at things still moving on after the death of George Floyd, over 80 days of continuous protests in America, they started a movement, Charlton, when that happened. That movement has to continue. It may have gone down to a flicker, just a little bit, but with the killing, with the shooting in Tosh, Wisconsin, Charlton, somebody threw gasoline back on the fire.
Yeah.
This is something that the administration can't avoid now. They can't walk away from it. They can't talk away from it because Americans are tired of seeing people get shot on television. This is the reason why the cry for sports, you got to get them back out there playing so we can distract them from what we always do.
Yeah.
That distraction has no longer been there. And white America, as well as all America, has witnessed the atrocities that have been going on decades against people of color.
I believe Colin Kaepernick, he's from the Wisconsin area. I might be wrong. and then his family moved out to California. He also has a lot of law enforcement. Isn't it ironic? Wisconsin Lutheran College in the same neighborhood, or the same state, where I believe Colin Kaepernick grew up, but I'm not 100% sure on that, Big C. But I do believe
born in Wisconsin.
Born in Wisconsin. So things can change, and anybody that can't see change, then just step to the side and let the people that see it do things. I always believe that America has to get out and vote. Text the word VOTE to 26797 and register. Text all your friends and family. Tell them Big C and the NFL said to get out and do it. It's not about black or white. It's about justice and injustice. And if any white American can see, white men walking down the road with shotguns, machine guns, and POTUS says nothing about it, and Mike Pence says nothing about it, and law enforcement gives them water to drink as opposed to gunshots and being tased, you got to see that's wrong, because it's going to happen to white kids too. Is you sit back and say nothing about it, it's going to happen too. Man, our show goes by way too fast. So Dr. King always talked about silence, meaning that you're complicit. White silence means more violence against minorities and also against white people. Again, most of these protesters, they're Caucasian. There's not that many black people in the country. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, white silence has always been there, and that's that systemic racism. When it's not bothering you and it doesn't affect your neighborhood or your bottom line, you're going to be silent about it. You got to be killing them for a reason. They had to do something bad, so that's being silent. And that's what America has been. But like I said, now that we don't have sports, this is the thing that America fears more than anything, is that people are seeing on a daily basis what's happening. They're not sitting down, getting a bowl of popcorn, watching a sporting event.
Right.
They're sitting there without that popcorn in their hands, paying attention to the television and the news cycle.
Yeah.
And now that we get news in real time, 50 years ago, Charlton, we didn't get it.
Right.
So when a black person was killed in America, it was the next day that you got the news. Now you get it within hours, within minutes, Charlton.
Yeah.
And that's where the fear is amongst people, and that's why it's inciting the change. The young people who are driving this momentum in America, Charlton, they wasn't around during desegregation.
No.
They did not affect their lives. But they can't have people telling them what they can and cannot watch on television now, because they carry that information with them all the time.
And would you believe it? It was those students, those graduating seniors from Wisconsin Lutheran College. They spoke to the dean of that college, and they said they didn't want that white garbage coming out of the White House, Mike Pence and Donald Trump's Governor Wallace-style politics. They don't want it. They denounced it. It's been rebuked, and it's going to happen all over this country by decent people. As we come up on our close, and I believe, like my parents told me, if you have a problem, be a part of the solution. Don't just complain. And if you don't believe that things can change, then we don't want to hear from you either. You and I have that all the time, Big C. You got to see change when it's happening right in front of your face. People have been telling me all my life, you can't see the forest for the trees. I've always believed, as more people create dialogue, sometimes change will happen overnight. It's not always possible that it happened 5 years ago. What do you want to see going forward? I know that POTUS is going to have his dog whistle tonight, but Kamala Harris is going to chew them up. It's for decent people to listen to her rebuke and what the University of Wisconsin just rebuked with the Pence and Trump administration. We got to go for it with laws, and marching is fine, but we need laws to change. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, what I want to see right now is I want to see a change in the policies in college athletics. I mean, the University of Oklahoma has been hit with one of those outbreaks also of COVID-19, Charlton.
Wow.
And they're marching on. They're continuing on putting these athletes out there in harm's way in Oklahoma. So if Oklahoma got it, Oklahoma State is going to get it. And several of the smaller universities there in the state will also, Charlton.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to see a change. I want to see a change about the care of humanity in America, whether it's on the streets, whether it's on the sports field. Because if you're going out for your economic bottom line and putting all these athletes in harm's way and you're not willing to take that risk, then that's the systemic racism that we deal with in America.
Well, Big C, very well said. It's going to take all good people. It's going to take the clergy. It's going to take lawmakers, sports owners. I mean, maybe they can help too if they have the heart for it. I don't think most of them do. It's going to take people speaking out. If you're silent, then you are part of the problem. Nobody has to like what anybody says, but at least do your best to get the conversation going. And I ask black and white all over this country, in fact, all over the world and the universe, to have dialogue about treating people fair. in creating liberty and justice for all. That's the only thing that we can all do. We can't just sit back and leave it up to the athletes. And to me, Big C, seeing what the University of Wisconsin did, the Liberty, I believe it's called Lutheran College, Wisconsin Lutheran College, that is hope. That's a lot of hope. Big C, what are you hoping for? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, like I said, the hope that I'm hoping for is that white Americans address black Americans as people. I would love to see that part, that clause in the Constitution change. Because until that constitutional phrase is changed, Charlton, we will never be thought of as total citizens and people in the United States of America. You have to get rid of the immunity for police. Once that is gone, police will look at black people in a different perspective. Is that I just can't shoot him and not worry about anything. If
Amen.
I shoot him, there are consequences. I need to use diplomacy when I'm dealing with black people in America, and that's what police have to do. All police are not bad, Charlton, but you are a bad cop when you won't turn into bad cops. It makes you complicit to what they are doing.
Yeah, and that's why it tastes good, people. Very well said, Big C. Back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
You know, Charlton, as much as we talk about sports and all, we need to look at the black mothers in America. Black mothers are losing their children at horrific rates, and not because they're in some war across the sea, because they can be walking down the street and killed in a war that's going on in America by people who are allowed to carry guns against them. This is what we need to change in America. Think about the black mothers that you're destroying their lives and their family on. I want to thank the frontline healthcare workers, nurses, doctors, first responders. You are the greatest people in America because you do what you do every day and you don't judge people.
Amen. That's very well said. And for Donald Trump, that says nothing about what happened in Wisconsin. And he said, when you arrest them, rough them up. That's 7 times. Vote. Everybody get out and vote every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide. Follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to deal with that on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.